guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I am filming a video for you guys because ever since I got out of Love Island, it was a big question that all of you, well, not all of you, but some of you wanted to know about what I studied at college, university, when it comes to fashion, how I got my job at Asos, just everything sort of fashion related when it comes to education and jobs. So I thought I'd give you a little insight into everything to do with my fashion life. It's been a crazy one. I've loved it. I still love it. Fashion is just everything to me. I feel like one thing, sounds so silly, but one thing that I just live for, like one thing that makes me happy every day is clothes. And I don't care if that sounds a bit shallow, because it doesn't, because I understand what goes into a garment, what goes into making it, designing it, everything. And it's a billion industry. So I'm just going to start off from the very beginning. I've got a few little questions from you guys on my Instagram that I'll answer as well, but I'll just start from where my love of fashion started. Kind of began at school really, and when it came to like dress down days at school and you were able to wear what you wanted, and I always wanted to make sure I looked the best, and not in a vain way, just wanted to make sure I had the best outfit, because I was like, I love clothes, I need to have the coolest outfit that's like hot this season, like, and I'd always be like, Mum, please, can we go clothes shopping so I can buy something new? I never really knew what I wanted to wear, but like I'd always just go to a shop and fall in love really. And the shop at the time that was like the shop was Topshop. So my mum would take me to Topshop and I'd buy like a new jumper, or like obviously depending on the season. And it was just so fun. Like I'm very grateful of my mum for always letting me buy something new, because I know not always people can do that and afford to do that, but not that my mum could, but I think she knew how much I loved it, so she did it for me. Kind of grew up through school like realising that I loved clothes. So then when I was in year 10, you have to pick what year do you have to pick your GCSEs? Year 9? No. Yeah, year 9 you have to pick what you're going to do in year 10 and year 11. Straight away, no brainer was textiles, because it was like I knew that sewing was involved, like you got to be creative when it came to fabrics, and just loved it really. So I was like, okay, yeah, let's do that. It honestly was my favourite class out of every class that I'd done at secondary school. Art, I loved art. I felt like I was quite good at drawing, which kind of, when it comes to fashion and art, they come hand in hand really. So those were my two favourite classes. I didn't like get, you know, A stars in those. I actually failed. Not technically failed, but I had to drop it. So basically at school, our art teacher became pregnant and we got a substitute teacher, and he taught us for 2 years, year 10 and year 11, and when it came to like halfway through year 11, we all got pulled in to the head teacher and with our parents saying that we've been taught the wrong syllabus, and the exam that we're going to be examined on, you won't know anything, like you haven't been learning it. And they predicted the grade that I would get if I still took it anyway, and it was like a D, so I would have failed. So I didn't want a failed GCSE on my papers, so they was like, you can either drop it or take it, you may potentially get higher than that, but if you don't, that you're gonna fail. So I was like, right, okay, well I'm just gonna drop it there and then, because I didn't really have the confidence that I was gonna do well in it. Even though I loved it, I just, yeah, dropped that. And then textiles, I got a B. You know, I didn't get even get an A in that, which is a bit weird really, because I loved it so much. But I think at school, my favourite subject was maths, but that's a whole different thing, and I did really well in that, and that was the only thing I did really well in. So anyway, then it got to college. Because I'd done so well in maths, my dad was really adamant that I took A-levels, and maths being one of them. I wasn't passionate about anything else to want to do A-levels, because I'm pretty sure or you have to take 3 or 4. Couldn't think of anything that I really wanted to do. And you can't do fashion as an A-level. To do fashion, you'd have to do a B-Tech. You have 1 qualification, but it's a bigger qualification, kind of. Not bigger, but it's same level as if you did 2 A-levels, meant the same as 1 B-Tech. I was like, Dad, I want to do fashion. Like, Mum, I found this college, the fashion room, and everything as she was saying that we was going to do. I was just absolutely amazed by it. I was like, this just looks so fun. I have to do it. And my dad was really like, Dad, I know you're watching this, because Dad watches my YouTubes every Sunday night. But let's not lie, he was very wary about me doing fashion. He wanted me to do something academic, like, you know, something that you're quite clever at. And I just didn't want to do it. So I tried to see if I could do fashion alongside maths, but they said no, because fashion will be so intense and it's much longer and harder that you wouldn't put your all into maths. So that was just a no. So I made my final decision and I was like, yep, I'm gonna do it. So it was fashion design. Well, over the 2 years, I basically learned how to pattern cut. I learned sewing. So you basically learn from design actually in an art book, and then the inspiration that comes from it. So where people might get design inspiration from, which it kind of comes from a lot of things in the world. Like, you could be like, right, I'm gonna look at interior, and then you would look at shapes and textures that come with interior, and then you would incorporate it into design. Designing an outfit, like a piece of clothing. So we did that, and then we learned how to sort of draw, like, you know, the mannequin bodies, and then like from that inspiration then turn it into an outfit, and then from that you learn how to pattern cut, sew, and then actually make a final garment. So at the end of the 2 years, we had a fashion show. I made 2 dresses out of pleather. I did like a laser cutting design on it with like a backing, like a lining of the fabric for the dress, so that it was 2 different colours. I don't know, I can't even remember where I got the inspiration from. It would all be in my art books in my garage somewhere, but that was really, really fun. I was very embarrassed to do the fashion show, but we actually got models in to walk the fashion show, and then we walked out with the models with our collection at the very end. And I just was like, this is just me all over. I loved doing it. Don't get me wrong, college, you know, you're at that age where you do piss about a little bit, and don't get me wrong, I did a little bit. I knew that this is what I wanted to do and be serious in. So then it came to, we got our final grades, and I got a merit. So I didn't even get a distinction. So it does show you don't need the highest grades of the class to be able to excel or get the job that you want to get. Applied for universities, and at this point I'd done design, so I knew all of the basics and a bit more to design a collection, but I didn't get on with pattern cutting very well. I didn't really like it. I did love sewing, and I would always make my own clothes after that. I asked my mum for my birthday to give me a sewing machine, buy me a sewing machine, and she bought this really cute baby blue sewing machine, and because I knew how to do it, I had made my own dress for a party once, and I remember going there and being like, this is so cool, I'm wearing something that I have made. And everyone was like, where's your dress from? And I was like, I made it. And they were like, no, you didn't. And I was like, yeah, I did. When my fashion teacher, she was basically saying you need a degree to kind of get somewhere in the fashion industry. You know, when there's a checklist that brands and companies are looking when they hire you, if you don't have a degree, then they look for experience. And I hadn't had a job. I worked part-time in Superdry, or Superdrug first and then Superdry, 1 day a week. It wasn't enough experience to get into sort of like a big fashion company like Asos, which was my goal. So I was like, okay, well, looks like I've got to go to uni then. So I went to Ravensbourne University, which at the time was like a really new arts university. Not many people knew about it. I can't remember how new it was, but it was that new that we were the first people to join the course that I was on. It was fashion buying and brand management. Yeah, no one had ever done this course before. So I was very nervous. I was kind of a bit like, oh, if it's not been taught before, then we're like guinea pigs really, being tested on. That sounds awful, but you know. I didn't get into any other universities, to be flat out honest with you. I didn't get in anywhere. I got into this one in like West London and it was so far away from my house. I didn't want to go there. I also didn't want to move away from uni because I had a boyfriend at the time. I was obsessed with him, so I didn't want to leave him. So I didn't have that uni experience of like leaving and staying somewhere, so I used to commute from home. In that course, we basically, so obviously we studied buying, merchandising, trend forecasting, and then that was kind of year 1 and 2. Year 1 and 2 with a bit of brand association as well, and how like marketing, how brands work, what you'd have to do. And then the 3rd year was basically we had to come up with a brand. We wanted to start with everything that we've learned from scratch. And this was basically, we had all the information of how you would buy, how many units you would buy, like what style, like what your range would look like. It was very in-depth. I could sit here and talk about it for ages, but I also don't want to bore you. And then I graduated with a 2-1. So again, not a first, but didn't need it because I got my job at Asos anyway. So it was coming round to the final presentation. I had to do no exams, it was all coursework and then a presentation of what you've come up with, and it had to be like as if I could start this brand tomorrow. Like I had the website sorted, I had like fake, you know, samples and a range and costings and how much I was going to sell it for and how many units I was going to buy, what the branding looked like. We did really cool things like what the package would look like when someone bought it online, the bags it was in, my logo, swing tags on the clothes, labels in the clothes, like absolutely everything you can think of to actually start a brand. So it was really, really cool. Coming up to it, I was like, right, uni's going to be finished soon. I mean, a lot of people was like, I'm going to have the summer off, enjoy it, and then find a job. But because of that, I knew that was what everyone did. I was like, I'm then going to be competing with everyone after summer who's trying to get a job, who's just finished university. And I thought, F that. I'm applying before everyone else. I've got to get a job before anyone else so that I'm there first. So I hadn't even completed the course yet, but I was applying for jobs. I went for a job at Arcadia. If anyone who knows about fashion and remembers Arcadia, they are no longer, but they were the group that owned Topshop, Topman, Miss Selfridge, who else? Dorothy Perkins, all those brands. That's obviously gone bust now. I went for a really like tough process with them. It was like the interview was about 5 stages long, and I made it to the very last stage, and they said I didn't have enough experience. And I was just like, how is that even fair? I've just studied for however long. I did work placements for 3 months at university. That was a part of the course. You had to do 3 months where you worked. I went to 3 different companies. I worked at, God, I feel like I can't even remember. I worked in a lingerie brand in Notting Hill. I worked with a vintage designer, like she was in buying, she had her own shop in Portobello Road, and she basically sourced vintage designers like Chanel, Hermes. I think she only really specialised in Chanel and Hermes because they were so like the top luxury brands and what people were like would come after, because they'd have like one-off limited edition pieces. Anyway, worked with her, and then I can't even remember what the 3rd one was. How bad is that? Did work experience, but apparently even though I've been at uni for 3 years, I didn't have enough experience. Like, what am I supposed to do? Anyway, I didn't get that, got knocked back, and then I was applying for River Island, and I got an interview at River Island, and they didn't even ever get back to me. Like, they didn't even send me a rejection letter or email. They just never spoke to me ever again. So must have royally messed that one up. And then I finally got an email back from Asos saying, come in for an interview. I'd obviously been knocked back twice at this point. Asos was my dream job, like dream company to work for. I was like, if I can work for any brand in the whole world in this very moment in my life, it was Asos. Like, it was my dream. I thought, you know what, I would not be able to hack another rejection, because I would have felt so bad and so like down about not getting it. So I did, basically, this is like my top tricks on how to ace an interview. I'm obviously applying this to a fashion brand, but you can sort of take what I say and apply it to sort of anything really. So the first thing I did was look at the job description, because within the job description they want to know, have you done that before? You know, have you experienced doing these roles? What experience do you have from doing that? Because if you don't know what the job description is or entails, you're coming into that job interview into the complete unknown, and you're not going to be able to you might be able to, but I think you need to be completely prepared. So I looked at the job description, I broke it down bit by bit, every single bullet point that they wanted me to do in this job, and basically give an example of where I've used that in all of the experience I've had in the brands that I work with at Superdry. Like things that I've taken from that, because I worked there for 2 years. So, you know, I've worked with clothes, I've worked with the public as a sales assistant, with costings, everything. I basically took all of that, and it was things like dealing with samples, like being able to communicate with suppliers. And, you know, even if I couldn't say that I'd communicate with a supplier, I could say I've communicated with head office, I've communicated with the public. Like my whole job at Superdry meant I had to communicate with other people. So even if it's not exactly what they're saying, take from that and adapt it to how you actually have used that in other ways. And then I basically went online and I googled Asos interviews, and there's this website called Glassdoor, I think it is, and people go on that website after the interview and write down questions that they asked in the interview. So I went on there and researched for my role, which was buying, that I was going into, every question that they could possibly ask me that they've asked someone else, and again wrote down examples of what I would say to those questions. Third and final thing that I did was I went on the Asos website, and they have like a find out about us page, and like the history of Asos and the things that they stand for, like whatever it is they have on their website to tell you more about that company. I literally wrote it all down and revised. I literally memorised every single thing I knew about this brand, the date it started, why it started, what was the first thing they had on their website, the charities that they work for, like movements that they've started, brands they may have collaborated with, how many brands they have on their website, lots of different things that the information has given to me. And I was like, I need to remember all of this. I need to be like an Asos fan. fully prepped for this interview. I've never prepped for an interview more in my whole life. I definitely didn't do that with the previous two, which I think is maybe where I went wrong. So yeah, turned up at Asos, we got sent through, and I'm sitting there waiting, and there was this girl next to me, and she was like, oh, are you going for the buying interview? And I was like, yeah, I am. Are you? She was like, yeah. And then she went, so
what experience do you have then?
And I was like, well, I've just graduated and I studied buying at university. She was like,
yeah, well, I'm a stylist for Burberry, and like I've done this, and like I studied this, and then like I also went to this place and did this, and blah, blah, blah.
Like I was the one interviewing her, and she was like just telling me all this stuff that made me scared then, because it made me realise I didn't have the experience. I didn't know as much as she did. She was a little bit older than me. We had to basically, for the interview, create a trend presentation on what was going to be in fashion. So whatever was coming up in autumn, winter and spring, summer the next year, we needed to present what we thought was going to be in fashion. That is obviously down to a lot of research, by the way. You do not just make that up. That there is a formula to what is going to be in fashion, which a lot of people may not know about, but it don't just come from nowhere. Anyway, I knew about that, so I'd done the trend. She was like,
yeah, so what did you do for your presentation?
And I was like,
I did a trend board like they asked.
And she was like,
well, I created a magazine.
And I was like, brilliant. What the actual hell? Like, she's created a magazine, she's started for Burberry, she's clearly going to get this job over me. And I don't know what came over me, but I was like, no, I'm not letting this happen. I'm not letting myself get rejected again. So I don't know, I just got this like wave of confidence and I was like, I'm going in there, I'm going to be so confident, I'm going to be chatty, I'm going to be nice, I'm going to reel off absolutely everything I know about this brand, and I'm going to come to them with every interview question they ask me with full confidence, full force, and it worked. I did find out when I started working at Asos that she'd got the job too. So there was obviously more than one job role going. And it's so funny, I remember seeing her and she acted like she didn't know me. And I was like, weird. That's what you will learn in fashion, guys. People are so competitive. There are bitches. I'm just gonna say it. There are not nice people in the fashion industry. It's a known thing. And I don't know why people have this like level of authority that they think they have over you and they think they're better than you, and it's a massive competition because you're all fighting for that same role. You're all fighting to be a buyer, and there isn't, compared to buyers and buyers assistants and assistant buyers, so the roles that go is buyer's assistant, assistant buyer, buyer, and within those roles that you have levels at ASOS. So you've got entry buyer's assistant, established buyer's assistant, and then senior buyer's assistant. And then when you get from senior, you have to take an exam and go to assistant buyer, and then with that entry is established, senior, and then from senior then you get junior buyer, and then you go up to the top to senior buyer, right? The amount of roles underneath to be that top buyer, and there's a lot of different departments to all get to that one place, so it is very competitive. I feel like I'm losing track now, so I'm going to answer some questions. What was my position at ASOS? So yeah, I applied for buyer's administrator / buyer's assistant, same thing, as entry, because I'd never actually done a buying job before. So that's starting at the very bottom, and I worked my way up. I was there for 3 years, so I got promoted every year. Started off at entry for the first year, second year got promoted to established, third year got promoted to senior. And just as I was going to be applying for the assessment to be an assistant buyer, I found out about Love Island. So, world's changed, basically. But I would have gone for it. Very hard, apparently. I'm not good at exams at all. You get put in a proper real-life buying situation, and it is quite scary. But I felt like I knew enough. I got to the point at ASOS where, so I worked on outlet non-clothing, which meant that I did swim, I did women's swim, men's swim, women's lingerie, men's underwear, accessories, jewellery, and nightwear. So I worked across 5 different departments, and trust me when I tell you, what is that on the floor? Is that a spider or something? Can you see it under the chair and it's crawling? I keep losing track what I was talking about. Yeah, so the departments that I work for. And then, as I worked my way up, my buyer trusted me in giving me the jewellery department. I bought my own department. Like, I was the buyer for jewellery on outlet for a little while. So I worked with suppliers, I did the costings. Obviously everything needed to be like approved by my buyer and my merchandiser. I couldn't just be like, yeah, send that off. But I did everything that she would do, and all she had to do was look over it and say yeah. And I feel like I have always loved jewellery, and everyone sort of knew I loved jewellery. I always had really cool jewellery on, and she trusted me in buying it. So what outfits did you wear to work? I always struggle. I mean, I can't tell you what outfits I actually wore because who knows, I worked there for 3 years. That was one thing. Let me tell you, right? So because I worked in fashion, obviously I loved clothes, and I made sure that I went into that office full glam. I made sure I wore makeup like most days, like not because like of my acne, but kind of was a little bit, but I would never really go into work without makeup. Like, I always wanted to look presentable, and I always needed to make sure that I had the best outfits on. Like, I was obsessed with shopping. Like, I feel like it just comes hand in hand, really. I don't get it when there's buyers that aren't fashionable themselves. It really confuses me. There are some of them. Maybe they just know but don't care to wear it themselves. But yeah, so I would always wear the coolest clothes. And then we had a Christmas party one year at Asos. We had awards and I won Best Dressed at Asos. So that in itself is an achievement. I really pride myself for that one. I think that's probably the best award I've ever got. Probably the only award. No, I got some gymnastics awards. Came first, obviously. I always come first. I'm the winner of everything. Joking, that makes me sound so vain, but I actually genuinely have won everything I've done. I feel like I'm a very motivated person, and everything that I do, I put my bloody best into it. Do you know what I mean? I pride myself in working very hard and like giving my all to something that I love. How did I decide which career path to take? So this is a good one actually, I haven't mentioned. So I was talking about how I did design and then I didn't really like it. My sister had a friend, she worked in fashion buying, right? I'd never heard of the role before, ever. I didn't know what it entailed, and she was a fashion buyer for M&S. And my sister had spoken to her and she basically told Jess like what she kind of did day to day. And she was like, yeah, like she basically buys clothes for the shops. Like she does shopping for a living. Like obviously you've got like the admin that comes with it, but in the grand scheme of things, that is actually what you do. And I was like, oh my God, shop for a living. Like that is my dream job. Why would I not want to do that? So then that's when I looked into unis and looked for buying degrees and kind of like researched on what buying actually was and fell in love with it. What's the salary for a buyer? Depends. So you've got senior buyer, you've got junior buyer, established buyer, senior buyer, and then you've got head of buying. But when it comes to head of buying, you don't actually get to do any of the fun bits anymore. You're kind of overseeing all the buyers and you're just basically a manager. But I mean, I'm completely making this up, but I'm pretty sure when I was researching it, like a buyer on average could like earn between 60 to 120k. If you're head of buying, I would say that was about 120k, maybe. I don't know. Could just be completely making that up, but I think it's roughly that. And yeah, it depends how big the company is. Depends
where you are in the country.
Yeah, if it's in London, you get paid more. If it's outside of London, you don't get paid as much. It all completely depends. So don't go against that for word. I don't know what brands pay. Someone said, have you always loved it like ever since you were a little girl? If so, pick stories please. Like I wish I had pictures of me in my little outfits, but I don't have pictures of me as a kid. Do you need a fashion degree to work at Asos? So I sort of mentioned it before, you don't need one. I definitely feel like they look for one, but if you don't have one, then they look for experience. If you've worked with with brands and companies and you've managed to work your way up from like leaving school and getting like internships or work placements, and sometimes you've got to do it for free in fashion. Like genuinely, if you want to get experience, you've just got to say, I'll do it for free. Like that's what an internship is all about. And do you know what? ASOS used to do this program where they would hire a bunch of interns every single year. In my departments, because I had so many and I was the only BA, I needed help really. I knew I needed help. My buyer knew I needed help, but they would never commission me having another BA. So I'd get an intern, which would also be quite stressful because in 3 years that I worked at ASOS, I had to train an intern alongside my job because they've obviously come to learn about the role, and I basically had to be a trainer. Added onto my job as well, I've got to train a new person every 6 months. They switched around, so I had 3 in total because they stopped it in the end. They got rid of all the interns. If you can't get experience, do it for free. Biggest challenges, my friends messaged me, where did you go to cry at work? I'm going to end it on this one. Maybe a bit of a depressing one to end it on actually, but maybe let's just give a realistic outlook to working in fashion. Cried a lot. It's very stressful. It's very fast paced. Like I said, some people, if you don't get a good boss, like a good buyer, that can make your life hell. Everyone, even in any industry, everyone knows having not a nice boss is really difficult to like juggle and deal with. I was quite lucky. In my time that I was there, I had about 5 different buyers, and the last one, I had 2 amazing buyers, Laurie and Christina. They probably aren't watching this, but if you are, the best bosses I've ever had. Christina was my last buyer before I left Asos. She was before I left, she knew about me going on Love Island. She kept it secret for me. Before her was Laurie, and she was Canadian, and she just was such a vibe. We partied together. She just was a nice boss to have, and that's really important. But you're not always that lucky. Like I didn't have some other nice ones. You know, not that they weren't nice, but didn't click, or they were very strict. Because I like to chat when I work. I know that sounds silly, and some people would be like, no, you shouldn't. But I got some of the best friends I have from working at Asos. So even though I'm telling you it's bitchy and there's horrible bosses, I've made friends with the most amazing girls that even after leaving, and they've left Asos, like 2 of them still work there, and we're just like best friends. We see each other all the time. One of them, Kat, has moved to bloody Devon back home, like bloody 4 hours away from us, but we always make sure we meet up. It's hard to meet up with them because we all live all over the place, but once every other month or something, always at each other's birthdays. There's 5 of us. We do a big weekend for all of our birthdays, like, and even though I cried a lot, it was very stressful, I have the best memories of my working life in the fashion industry from that, and I would not change a thing. You may have your down days, you may have a bad day, but it doesn't mean it's a bad life, because you will have a good day the next day, and you get some really amazing experiences from it. As a buyer, you get to travel the world. Like, that was my dream. And I was doing my collection with Asos, like the girls had just gone to China, they'd just gone to America. Like, you get to go into fashion weeks and like get inspiration, and it is amazing. It's an amazing job. So don't let me scare you off. Go for it. Work hard. If you love fashion like me, do not be scared to do a job that isn't academic, in a sense where you're not doing something that is guaranteed to get you good money. You do start off on a rubbish wage, but you can make it up. And I think the rubbish wage at start is worth it, because if you're doing what you love, you'll never work a day in your life. And that is a saying that I will stand by forever. I've always wanted to do something that I love so that it doesn't actually feel like work. Most amazing time ever. Anyway, I'm going to cut it there because I'm waffling on now, but I really hope you enjoyed that. Please message me if you've got any other questions. I get girls who ask me for advice all the time, and I always reply. And when they're at university and you've got some sort of study thing where you need you're doing coursework and you've got to get people in the industry to back up your research, girls ask me for this all the time, questionnaires, and I always reply. Message me if you need my help. And yeah, hope that was informative enough for you guys. Okay, see you in the next one. Love ya.